If you still smugly believe that modern humanity is sitting pretty at the pinnacle of civilization and that our ancestors were just shirtless brutes banging rocks together, then congratulations, you've been duped by history textbooks for a century. Take a hard look at what the world is trying to hide. A massive white pyramid in China, ignored for 60 years. 10,000-year-old megalithic walls submerged at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, older than Stonehenge's great-grandfather. Mainstream science beats its chest, claiming the ancients had no wheels, no writing, and no metal tools. Laughable. Then, by what hypocritical miracle could they slice, move, and fit 800-ton stone blocks, heavy as 10 passenger jets, in Lebanon, joining them so tightly that a razor blade can't even slide through? Even the greatest Roman engineers, the most arrogant of the ancient world, were left speechless when they saw them, settling for building over them rather than daring to copy them. Or at an altitude of nearly 4,000 meters in Bolivia, where breathing itself is a luxury, who used stone hammers to cut blocks as hard as steel with the precision of a modern CNC machine? Scholars say it was patience? Oh, sure, patience. Patience enough to create perfect 6mm grooves and precise drill holes without a single piece of machinery? From Lebanon to Bolivia, from the Amazon jungles to ruins on the ocean floor, the same impossible engineering signature, the same chilling precision repeated across 6 continents. Clearly, something existed here before us, and they built to last. So what really happened behind the velvet curtain of the past? Who drew this mad blueprint before we even became self-aware? Welcome to Dark History. I am Zorro, and tonight, join me as we expose the lies carved in stone. Now, let's begin. (1945). The world is choking on the suffocating smoke of World War II's final days. An American pilot is flying a military transport plane through the gray clouds of central China. The engine's steady roar makes for a boring navigation flight until he happens to glance down through the cracked glass. There, rising amidst valleys hidden by mist, is something that shouldn't be allowed to exist. A pyramid. But this wasn't some ruined mound of earth. It was a colossal, stark white structure, standing proudly at nearly 1,000 feet, about 300 meters, piercing the sky. It was larger, more massive and grander than anything ever built on the Giza Plateau of Egypt. You'd think such a monumental discovery would hit the front page of every newspaper, right? Wrong. The Chinese government smothered every whisper, draping it in a haunting, absolute silence for 60 long years. As it turns out, That white ghost was just one of over 400 structures clustered within a 70-mile radius, massive structures being eroded by roots and weeds that almost no one in the Western world had ever heard of. But, my friend, if you think China is the only dark patch of history, I'm afraid you've underestimated humanity's oversight. That was just the appetizer for tonight's feast. History is not what happened, but what the survivors decided to rewrite. Let's leave Asia and sink into the pitch-black, freezing waters of the Baltic Sea in Germany. Just recently, at a depth of 21 meters below sea level, a group of marine geologists were performing a tedious scan of the ocean floor when their sonar bounced back an abnormal signal. Beneath that dark silt, they stumbled upon a massive stone wall stretching nearly a kilometer. Nature doesn't know how to stack stones in perfectly straight lines. This wall is 10,000 years old. Let that number sink into your mind for a moment. 10,000 years. This is officially the oldest megastructure ever found in Europe, predating the iconic Stonehenge by a staggering 5,000 years, and it was found purely by luck. If that ship's navigation system had been off by just a few degrees, this wonder would still be sleeping in eternal darkness. But the ocean isn't done surrendering its secrets. Not far away, off the coast of France, divers just confirmed the presence of a granite complex weighing 3,300 tons, submerged 9 meters deep. These great stones have stood there for 7,000 years, making them the largest underwater prehistoric structure ever discovered in France. We always delude ourselves with a linear, comforting narrative that our ancestors started by banging two rocks together in a cave, then slowly, very slowly, learned to farm, invented the wheel, and finally figured out how to build massive structures. But if you look at the surface of the continents, you'll see that story being torn to shreds. Look at the cracks in history scattered everywhere. In Bolivia, at a lethal altitude of nearly 13,000 feet, where the air is so thin your lungs scream for oxygen, someone cut the hardest rocks on the planet with 6-millimeter grooves and perfectly spaced drill holes, as if made by a modern CNC milling machine. The authors? A culture described by textbooks as having no metal tools, no wheels, and not even writing. In Lebanon, 3 colossal limestone blocks, each weighing 800 tons, were lifted 7 meters high and joined with a sick level of precision, so tight that a thin razor blade can't squeeze through. The Romans, the greatest engineering masters of the ancient world, were speechless. They had to build their temple on top of them because they couldn't replicate, let alone move, those stones. In Peru, granite walls show signs of vitrification. Surfaces melted smooth like a car windshield, requiring temperatures exceeding 1,100 degrees Celsius. I repeat, no recognized ancient culture had the capability to generate that kind of brutal heat on such a massive scale. In Turkey, a network of at least 12 archaeological sites, including Göbekli Tepe, is mocking every historical timeline. They existed before humans knew agriculture, using a complex shared symbolic language with a level of sophistication that mainstream scholars are breaking into a cold sweat trying to rationalize. I am Zorro, and welcome back to the dark corner of the world. Tonight, we take a 14-chapter journey across 6 continents, tracking the fragments of an undeniable law, no matter how hard academia tries to cover it up with forced explanations. A civilization was here before us, and they built everything to last. If you are a lone traveler who loves to immerse yourself in quiet night journeys, peeling back the lies we were taught in school, don't hesitate to like and subscribe to Dark History. The YouTube algorithm might not like the truth, but we do. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Debate, tear apart the theories. I'm always there, reading everything and sometimes smiling at your sharp insights. Now, brew yourself a strong cup of coffee, turn off the lights, and let's begin. Tonight, we revisit the open question from our previous documentary. Last time, we dove into geological records, dug through chemical traces, and searched for fossilized ghosts in deep time. We stood trembling in a temple older than the concept of agriculture to hear humanity's oldest stories. But we missed a key witness. We talked about what the soil and dust remember, but tonight, we're going to make the stones talk. Because lying scattered out there, from the snow-capped peaks of Lebanon to the barren highlands of Bolivia, or beneath the silt of the Baltic seabed, are structures that shouldn't be allowed to exist. Stones weighing beyond the load capacity of any ancient machinery. Cut so sharp they exceed the limits of stone hammers and copper chisels. Massive walls sitting 30 feet deep under the ocean, on coastlines that have been submerged for the last 10,000 years. And there is a pattern, a ghost of engineering that haunts us everywhere we look. The same irrational design logic, the same cold precision, the same insane technical knowledge applied across multiple continents, spanning millennia by cultures supposedly unaware of each other's existence. Welcome to the Altiplano, Bolivia, a winsome plateau sitting 3,900 meters above sea level. If you stand here, your lungs will go on strike from lack of oxygen, your heart will pound like a war drum, and your vision will blur. This is not a place for humans to build wonders. It is a place where people struggle to survive. There are no trees for wooden rollers, no rivers large enough to transport materials, and the source of the hardest stone is 90 kilometers away through treacherous mountain terrain. Yet, right in the heart of this harshness, we find Puma Punku. In the Aymara language, it means door of the puma. But to me, it looks like the mechanical workshop of a civilization that vanished into thin air. Look at the remains. These are not stones crudely hewn. The andesite blocks here, remember, andesite is one of the hardest volcanic rocks on the planet, equivalent to steel. Bear cuts that are sickeningly straight. We are talking about grooves exactly 6 millimeters wide, drill holes perfectly spaced to the millimeter, and right angles so clean you could use them to calibrate your own square. Modern engineers look at Puma Punku and they don't see archaeology. They see CNC machining. They see laser cutting. They see an industrial production line. The most unique features are the H blocks. These are modular, interchangeable components. Do you understand the significance of this? Standardization, mass assembly. That is the mindset of Ford, Boeing, or SpaceX. Not a Bronze Age tribe we're taught had no writing, no wheels, and no metal tools. They tell us our ancestors used stone hammers to carve andesite. Sure, that's like trying to cut a steak with a plastic spoon. Can it be done? Maybe if you have a few million years and the patience of a saint. But look at the polished smoothness of that surface. That's not the result of patience. That's the result of a technology we have lost. The weirdest thing about Puma Punku is its current state. The site hasn't aged by wearing down over time. It looks like a massive explosion happened, tossing blocks weighing tens or hundreds of tons everywhere like cards blown by the wind. Something ripped this place apart, a cataclysm, a terrifying earthquake, or something more brutal, leaving a giant jigsaw puzzle that archaeologists for a century haven't been able to solve. But let's set aside the breathlessness of Bolivia. We're flying halfway across the world to the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon to witness something even crazier. Baalbek. Here the Romans built the Temple of Jupiter, one of the greatest temples in history. But look beneath your feet. Under those proud Roman columns is a massive foundation, the Trilithon, consisting of 3 limestone blocks, each weighing about 800 tons. Let me do a little math for you to visualize. A fully loaded passenger jet weighs about 80 tons, so each stone at Baalbek is equivalent to 10 jets packed into a single block, lifted 7 meters high, and placed so snugly that a razor blade can't fit between them. The Romans were genius engineers, yes. They invented concrete, more durable than modern materials. But they didn't build this foundation. They simply found it, were stunned by its grandeur, and decided to place their temple on top of it to borrow its sacredness. Why am I so sure? Because in a quarry 800 meters away, we find the abandoned children. One stone weighing 1,000 tons, another 1,200 tons, and the largest one found in 2014 weighing a massive 1,650 tons. That is the weight of 450 adult elephants. Whoever was cutting these stones intended to move them uphill to add to the temple foundation. They had a method. They had confidence. But they stopped midway. The largest mobile crane in the world today, the Liebherr LTM11200, can only lift about 1,200 tons under ideal conditions. Yet more than 2,000 years ago, or much longer, someone intended to move a 1,650-ton block over rugged terrain without an internal combustion engine or hydraulic systems. The truth is, we are seeing the same handprints. In Peru, the granite walls at Sacsayhuaman also show vitrification, a mirror-smooth surface only possible when stone is heated to over 1,100 degrees Celsius. Lebanon, Bolivia, Peru, 3 sites, 3 continents, thousands of miles apart, but the techniques are hauntingly similar. Impossible weight, impossible precision, and a terrifying silence from mainstream history. A common manual once existed on this planet, and what we've just seen is only the tip of the iceberg. Because when you look down into the deep blue waters of the ocean, you'll see that this civilization didn't just build on the highest peaks. They left their mark in places where sunlight never reaches. Imagine you are standing before a veteran detective's investigation board. On it are photos of 100-ton stones in Lebanon, perfectly beveled walls in Peru, illogical H-blocks in Bolivia, and ruins deep at the bottom of the Baltic and French seas. Now take a spool of red yarn and start connecting them. Distance, tens of thousands of kilometers. Time, millennia apart. Traces left behind. Identical. The same chilling precision, the same obsession with manipulating giant stones. and the same technical skill far beyond the era. The framing question for our entire documentary tonight is, in fact, a very simple one. If ancient cultures, scattered across completely separate continents with no clear trade or contact, all built structures that defy every technological limit assigned to them by history, what is the simplest explanation? Traditional academia loves the phrase independent invention. They want us to believe that by some random miracle, people separated by an entire ocean all woke up one morning and decided, hey, let's carve a 100-ton volcanic block so tight that a piece of paper won't fit, even though we only have copper chisels and stone hammers. Do you believe in that lazy coincidence? I don't. Science is about observing patterns, and here there is a law, a stubborn law that refuses to be broken, despite mainstream scholars trying to cram it into forced, desperate explanations. A law that keeps appearing no matter where you point the lens. But if you think this shadow civilization was only good at megalithic puzzles, you're mistaken. They didn't just understand weight. They mastered sophistication at a microscopic level. Look away from the great megastructures and into the palm of your hand. This time we're not going up mountains. We're diving into the deep sea. From a shipwreck submerged at the bottom of the Aegean Sea, divers recovered a rusted metal lump. After being peeled back by modern X-rays, what emerged inside dealt a stinging slap to the face of human progress history, a 2,000-year-old bronze computer. That's right, you heard me correctly. It's called the Antikythera mechanism, an insanely sophisticated mechanical system containing dozens of perfectly meshing gears designed to calculate astronomical cycles, predict solar and lunar eclipses, and track the positions of the planets. Textbooks say differential gear technology like this couldn't exist before the European Renaissance. Yet, there it lies, mocking us from the depths of 2,000 years ago. If they could build a bronze computer as complex as a Swiss watch 2 millennia ago, what stopped them from possessing other advanced technologies that time has cruelly erased? Technology is not a steady upward line from ignorance to civilization. It is a sine wave with brilliant peaks and free falls into the abyss of oblivion. And it seems we are walking through a graveyard of those peaks. Let's go back to those underwater walls I mentioned at the beginning. The massive stone wall in the Baltic Sea in Germany, and the 3,300-ton granite structure off France. Why are they underwater? The answer isn't in architecture, it's in the climate. These structures weren't built underwater. They were built on dry land. But that was the land of 10,000 years ago, before the last ice age ended. When the ice melted, global sea levels rose hundreds of feet, swallowing coastal areas and drowning the entire history of the civilization that built them. Standard archaeology insists that human civilization, with writing, architecture, and social organization, only began in Mesopotamia about 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. So who were the ones who stacked kilometer-long stone walls 10,000 years ago? Whose wall is the 7,000-year-old one in France? We are facing an inescapable truth. Our earliest civilizations, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Romans, the Incas, were not startups from scratch. They were heirs. They inherited the ruins of a collapsed world. They wandered across a planet littered with giant stone skeletons, looked up at structures beyond their understanding, and then did what humans have always been best at, moved in and claimed it as their own. We are following the stones. From the Amazon jungles, where LiDAR waves are stripping back megacities swallowed by vegetation, to the crumbled bronze computer and the vitrified cliffs in Peru, everything is screaming the same message. Something, some power, some civilization was here before us, and they built everything to last. Only they didn't anticipate that followers like us would take so long just to realize they existed. Leaving the dark depths of the ocean, we step onto the arid land of southeastern Turkey. Under the scorching sun of Mesopotamia, the history textbooks you once gritted your teeth to memorize are being burned to ash. For decades, we looked at Göbekli Tepe and soothed ourselves by saying, "Oh, it's just an anomalous temple, a random flash of brilliance from cavemen." But academia just received another bucket of cold water. It wasn't an isolated anomaly. What lies beneath the hills of Turkey is actually a network of at least 12 massive sites. 12 megalithic megastructures, all buried deep underground, all sharing a common, complex symbolic language with reliefs of aggressive predators, all showing a level of architectural sophistication that scholars once swore was impossible. And the slap to the face of modern pride, all of them were built before humans knew agriculture. Let that ironic truth sink into your brain. The scenario we were brainwashed with is humans learned to grow wheat, domesticate animals, settle into villages, have free time, and only then began to think about building temples or developing religion. But Turkey is screaming an entirely opposite sequence at us. Hunter-gatherers, the people who should have been busy running from beasts and starving through the winter, somehow gathered a massive workforce to quarry, carve, and erect T-shaped limestone pillars weighing dozens of tons, arranging them in perfect astronomical circles. Who taught them that? Who provided the blueprint? We are facing an unsettling truth. From the snow-capped mountains of Lebanon, where 800-ton blocks were left like an unfinished construction site, to the deadly thin air of Bolivia, where andesite was sliced like butter. From the vitrified walls of the Peruvian jungle to the great walls at the bottom of the cold Baltic Sea, and the 2,000-year-old bronze computer rotting under the Aegean. 14 chapters, 6 continents, and a single rule that is never broken. No matter how hard traditional science tries to twist, bend, or cover up timelines to rationalize these ruins, the ghost of the truth still stands tall. There is a common manual, the same irrational engineering techniques, the same cold precision, the same supreme knowledge applied across different continents, in different millennia, by cultures supposedly never having seen each other. History is not an upward line. History is a cycle of people with amnesia. These stones are a wordless testament, the simplest explanation, though it bores a large hole in our self-esteem, is something was here before us. A peak civilization once walked this earth, breathed this air, and manipulated these giant stones as if gravity were a suggestion rather than a physical law. And they built to last. They didn't use steel, which would rust into dust after a few centuries. They didn't use glass or reinforced concrete, which would crumble and collapse under Mother Nature's touch. They chose stone, the hardest, heaviest, most immortal stone. They left scattered puzzle pieces so that future generations, us, the self-proclaimed pinnacle of evolution, would have to look on in ignorance and fear. Last time we dove into the geological record, searching for thin chemical traces to wonder if we were the first. But tonight, what the megaliths have told us has turned those chemical hypotheses into a childish joke. Everything we mentioned last time, as it turns out, was only the beginning. The truth isn't buried. It's placed right before our eyes, massive, naked, and challenging. You and I, we live in glass skyscrapers, storing all of humanity's memory on invisible server clouds, and pride ourselves on a fragile civilization that could be completely erased by a single solar pulse. If we disappeared tomorrow, 10,000 years later, plastic would decompose, metal would melt into red earth, and our cities would leave nothing but a strange sediment layer. But Baalbek will still stand there. Puma Punku will still bear those perfect 6mm cuts. Their history is more eternal than our future. Let's go back in time a bit. Autumn 2021. Jacob Gearson, a marine geologist, is taking his students from Kiel University for fieldwork on the ship Alor. The setting is the Bay of Mecklenburg in northern Germany. Their work that day was rather tedious, running a high-resolution echo sounder to scan the Baltic seabed. If you're a geologist, you're all too familiar with this site. Boulders scattered across the seabed, remnants of massive glaciers that retreated thousands of years ago. They are chaotic, random, and meaningless. Mother Nature doesn't care for neatness. But then, on that ordinary autumn day, the ALOR's sonar spat out something that left Gearson stunned. A straight line. Nature doesn't create straight lines stretching nearly a kilometer at a depth of 21 meters. These stones weren't random. They were placed there with a clear purpose. Small stones carefully filled the gaps between large ones. Gearson, who has studied rocks his whole life, couldn't find any damn geological process to explain this. So, he took it to the archaeologists. And their reaction? You might have just found something that overturns everything we know. Welcome to the Blinker Wall, a Stone Age megastructure, published in PNAS in 2024. This wall has sat there since the time when this area was still dry land, before the ice melted and submerged everything around 8,000 years ago. Let me clarify this for you. This wall is 5,000 years older than England's Stonehenge, and it makes the Great Pyramids of Egypt look like newborns, as it predates them by about 6,000 years. Archaeologists believe this was a drive lane, a perfect design to herd naive reindeer into a deadly bottleneck where prehistoric hunters were waiting with sharpened spears. Reindeer don't jump over walls, they walk along them. A massive, man-made meat trap. Sound logical? Very. But here is the slap to the face of academia. At the time this massive structure was built, the entire population of Northern Europe was estimated at fewer than 5,000 people. Imagine that. A group of people our textbooks label as nomadic hunter-gatherers living in caves with no fixed homes, could organize, calculate, and join forces to move 1,600 stones to create a 1-kilometer-long infrastructure. You call that nomadic? Sorry, that's a project management board. And the funniest or scariest part, we found it by total luck. no one was intentionally looking for the blinker wall. If that group of students hadn't scanned those exact coordinates, it would still be lying in darkness for another 10,000 years. So the question is, how many other things have we missed just because we haven't pointed the lens at the right spot? The Atlantic. December 2025. The waters off the coast of Brittany are never gentle. Eva Fouquet, a geologist, is burying her head in a pile of bathymetric charts using state-of-the-art LiDAR technology off the island of Sign. And once again, the old script repeats. A straight line 120 meters long blocking a submerged valley. 59 dives over 2 years. What they brought back were images of a stone monster, 20 meters wide, 2 meters high, with a total mass of 3,300 tons of granite. And it wasn't just a wall. Every so often, monoliths nearly 2 meters high rose like fangs, arranged in 2 perfectly parallel rows. They were anchored into the bedrock before the wall was built around them. This isn't a pile of bricks thrown together. This is architecture. This is engineering. And it was dated to around 5,800 to 5,300 BC. Again, these people possessed the mindset of powerful megalithic cultures before those cultures were even born. Who were they? No one knows for sure. The people of Brittany have long whispered a legend about Use, a brilliant city swallowed by the ocean in ancient times. Scientists, of course, will shake their heads. That's just a fairy tale? But my friend, fairy tales aren't born from nothing. Floods are real, loss is real, magnificent coastal landscapes swallowed by the sea are real. It was all just processed through a 10,000-year filter into a piece of folklore. Now, let's leave Europe for the Pacific. 1986. A diving instructor named Kihachiro Arataki is looking for hammerhead sharks. He didn't find sharks. Instead, he stumbled upon a pyramid. 25 meters under the water is a massive stepped stone structure, 150 meters long, with flat platforms, right angles, and grooves cut so square they're haunting. For nearly 4 decades, the scientific world has been tearing each other apart over it. Masaki Kimura says it's human remains. Robert Schoch from Yale insists it's just natural fractures in sandstone. Even if it's natural, nature seems to have a remarkable aesthetic sense for math. But here is the key point. The point that silences all debate. If Yonaguni was truly man-made, it had to have been built when the site was dry land, meaning during the last ice age. Again, the 10,000-year mark. A civilization that left no name, no trace, only a stone monument soaking in 25 meters of Pacific seawater. 3 structures, 3 bodies of water, 3 continents, all submerged, all built back when sea levels were low, and all found by accidentally tripping over them. Wherever we point sonar at the old coastlines, we pull up things that aren't supposed to be there according to mainstream history. But if you think these walls were a shock, you aren't ready for what comes next, because we've only talked about isolated structures. What happens if the ocean didn't just swallow a wall or a city, but an entire nation? Have you ever stood on the shores of the North Sea, looking out at the cold gray water and wondering what lies beneath besides fish and mud? The truth is, at the bottom of that sea, there aren't just ruins of shipwrecks. Down there is a nation. During the last ice age, the North Sea we know didn't exist. In its place was Doggerland, a great landmass stretching from Norfolk in the UK all the way to the Netherlands. It was as large as England and Scotland combined. Please, don't call it a narrow land bridge. It was a lush region with winding rivers, crystal clear lakes and dense forests. Deer, bison, and humans lived there. Not for a few years, but for thousands of years. For centuries, British fishermen in the shallows of the Dogger Bank have hauled up bones, antlers, and stone tools. Initially, academia dismissed them as oddities dropped from ships. Yes, my friends, sometimes arrogance prevents us from seeing the truth right under our noses. It wasn't until the 20th century that scientists began to piece the puzzle together. But the real clincher only came in March 2026. A study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, PNAS, dropped a bomb on our understanding. Researchers from the University of Warwick sucked mud from the seabed along a prehistoric river system called the Southern River. They extracted ancient DNA, cetDNA, from the soil, and the result? It delivered a direct slap to the face of old models. We used to think Doggerland was a desolate, ice-covered wasteland where shivering humans struggled to survive. Dead wrong. The DNA data indicates the presence of oak, elm, and hazel from over 16,000 years ago. A diverse, warm ecosystem. A rich paradise that could have sustained early civilized communities long before the sea swallowed it. And then, catastrophe struck. 8,150 years ago, a massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway triggered the Storegga tsunami. A wall of death surged through the North Atlantic, slamming into Doggerland, which by then had been fragmented into islands due to rising sea levels. But Doggerland didn't die instantly. It died a slow, agonizing death over millennia. Close your eyes and imagine. You live there. Generation after generation, you watch the sea creep closer. Your grandfather's campsite is now where fish swim. Your father's hunting ground is now a shallow coral reef. Memories of forests, rivers, homes, all turned into stories whispered around the fire. Real loss passed down through the ages. Now, multiply the tragedy of Doggerland across every continent on Earth. About 20,000 years ago, during the last glacial maximum, sea levels were 120 meters lower than they are today. The Sunda Shelf connected Southeast Asia with Indonesia, forming a land empire larger than modern India. Anyone who has taken a basic history class knows, where do humans like to build? River plains, coasts, maritime trade routes. Yet all those Ice Age locations are currently underwater. Marine archaeology is just an infant. We have maps of the surface of Mars that are more detailed than the maps of our own planet's ocean floor. Ridiculous, isn't it? If you think we only lost track of prehistoric wooden or clay ruins, look at Thonis Heracleion. For centuries, the academic elite laughed at Herodotus, the great Greek historian. He once wrote about a bustling port, a massive Egyptian center for trade and religion. But because no one could find it, modern scholars told each other, oh, Herodotus was just blowing smoke again. That's just mythology. In 2000, marine archaeologist Frank Gaudio dove into the Egyptian sea and found it, located exactly 6.5 kilometers from the crowded coast. Under 10 meters of water, it had been there for 1,000 years. Right under our noses, hidden beneath a thin layer of clay. A giant city with Greek cathedrals dedicated to Aphrodite, military garrisons, and magnificent temples that were continuously excavated up until 2025. Its artifacts now sit proudly in the Grand Egyptian Museum. The lesson here is brutally simple. If we can lose a great city that was clearly recorded in history books, visited by famous people, and was only 4 miles from the shore, then what else have we lost? The ocean swallowed Doggerland, swallowed Thonis Heracleon, swallowed the Baltic and French walls. Water hides the crimes of erosion. But what was built high on the mountains in lands out of the sea's reach, those survived. And the stones on those shores are screaming a story that is much, much crazier. The ocean is a glutton. It swallowed Doggerland, swallowed Thonis Heracleon, swallowed everything accidentally built too close to the water's edge when the Ice Age ended. But water can only hide what is at sea level. Things built on high ground, on mountain peaks, plateaus, and deep inland ranges, those survived. Ironically, what they tell us is just as mad as the ghosts at the bottom of the ocean. Because in those high places, even though they are tens of thousands of miles apart, we constantly run into a chilling common denominator. Structures built with the same techniques, aligned with the same stars. By people, the history books swear never spoke to one another. Let's do a little psychology test. When I say the word pyramid, where does your brain automatically go? Egypt, right? A few bigger nerds might say Mexico or Peru. Almost no one thinks of China. And that ignorance, my friend, is strange, because right now, within a 70-mile radius around the city of Xi'an, there are over 400 pyramid-shaped structures sitting there. Over 400. You heard me right. The largest of these have base dimensions comparable to the Great Pyramid of Giza, but they aren't made of polished, cut stone blocks. They are massive trapezoidal mounds pounded from earth and clay compressed so tightly they are as hard as rock. Most of the Western world is completely unaware of their existence. Centuries of neglect have turned them into hills covered in vegetation, where farmers nonchalantly plow on top of them. Most of them are royal tombs. The most famous? The tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the emperor obsessed with immortality, who created the legendary terracotta army. But here is the joke of history. After more than 50 years of research, his main tomb has never been opened. Radar waves have peaked down there. And what did they see? A massive complex far exceeding what is visible on the surface. Vast underground chambers, and you probably won't believe this, rivers of liquid mercury flowing steadily, matching ancient texts describing a miniature world inside the tomb perfectly. So why not dig it up? Because the government says, wait, excavation has been postponed indefinitely. A protection of heritage or a cover-up. Access to a host of other pyramid sites is restricted. There is no large-scale investigation for these hundreds of pyramids. This suppression once led to a notorious urban legend. In 1945, an American pilot named James Gaussman was flying over this area when he reported a massive white pyramid glistening in the sun with his jaw dropped. 2 years later, Colonel Maurice Sheehan confirmed it, estimating it to be 1,000 feet high, twice as high as the Great Pyramid of Giza. How did the Chinese authorities respond? For decades, they ignored it. White Pyramid? No, we don't have one. It wasn't until the 2000s that satellites identified a massive mound that might match the report, but it is much shorter than the pilot's accounts. Erosion? Camouflage trees? Or did the American pilots exaggerate? Researchers want to measure their astronomical features, but with strict access restrictions, surveying is almost impossible. But the scale of it is undeniable, a monumental building tradition completely ignored by the West. But wait, the East isn't done provoking us. Let's go to the Korean Peninsula. This place holds a statistic that should be bolded on the first page of every history textbook, yet you almost never hear of it. You think Europe is the sanctuary of megaliths? Wrong. South Korea contains between 35,000 and 40,000 dolmens. I repeat, more than any other country on Earth. More than all of Western Europe combined. A dolmen, a massive capstone weighing down standing stone pillars, usually used as a burial site from around 1000 BC. UNESCO had to recognize them as a World Heritage Site in 2000. But the damn question few bother to ask is, why here? What possessed a civilization on the Korean Peninsula to decide to erect more megaliths per square kilometer than anywhere else on the planet? Let's do some exhausting math. Quarrying, moving, and lifting slabs weighing from a few tons to 50 tons. Multiply that 40,000 times. What do you have? You have one of the most enduring and insane construction projects of the ancient world. This wasn't a jigsaw puzzle played by a few dozen cavemen. It required a massive population, tight organization, iron discipline, and deep religious motivation. It required a society that threw enormous resources into building eternal monuments for centuries. Their level of social organization is a perfect mirror of megalithic cultures in Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. But that is just the tip of a massive iceberg. Because if you spread out a map, you will realize a truth that will make your skin crawl. These stone tables don't just exist in Korea. They are everywhere, like a global haunting. If you think 40,000 dolmens in Korea were a shock, I'm sorry. We've only touched the surface of the madness. Because this megalithic ghost, it has no borders. It appears on every continent touched by human breath. Japan, yes. India, thousands of them, scattered across the arid Deccan Plateau. The Middle East? Yes. Western Europe? Well, needless to say, Brittany, Ireland, Scandinavia, and the Iberian Peninsula are full of them. Africa? Don't think Africa is out of the game. The Senegambian stone circles. More than 1,000 megalithic circles properly arranged, stretching in a band over 100 kilometers across Gambia and Senegal. A stone collection so great that UNESCO once again had to step in and grant certification. Do you see the strangeness here? Vast geographical distances. No Facebook, no email, and according to what we were taught, these cultures never had any connection with each other. Mainstream archaeologists, the white lab coat types who like everything neat, explain this phenomenon with a fancy term: convergent evolution. an independent invention driven by similar needs, their theory sounds very plausible. People everywhere faced death. Everywhere people wanted to honor the deceased. Everywhere stone was available. And designing a giant slab of stone on top of a few pillars is an extremely stable structure and highly symbolic. The idea that cultures fumbled and accidentally thought of the same blueprint, well, that's perfectly logical. Yes, extremely logical. That explanation is enough to lull most of us to sleep, but it doesn't explain everything. In fact, it has a hole as big as the foundation pit of these structures. Convergence explains the function. It explains why people stacked stones on each other. But it doesn't explain the precision. It doesn't explain why these structures share a common astronomical orientation, perfectly aligning with the sunrise, sunset, or seasonal equinox and solstice events. It doesn't explain the terrifying similarity in sophisticated construction techniques carried out by cultures separated by an entire ocean and thousands of years. And most importantly, it doesn't explain why the urge to build with stone, to build so massive, to build for eternity, suddenly erupted in similar stages across the world. It's as if someone or something flipped a great switch inside the consciousness gene of humanity. 400 suppressed pyramids in China, 40,000 dolmens in Korea, thousands of megalithic circles in Africa. The same urge, the same grandiose ambition arrogantly defying time, the same architectural DNA structure sprouting on every continent, among people who supposedly never knew each other existed. You call it convergence? Fine. But convergence doesn't explain the math. Convergence doesn't explain star maps. That is exactly what we find when we point modern lasers at the oldest ruins on Earth. The arrangement these silent stones create with the sky, it is precise, neat, and terrifyingly perfect. A precision that should never have been achievable without sophisticated measuring tools. Tools that history books tell us never existed at that time. Close your eyes. Imagine you are standing at the foot of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Not Giza through a phone screen, but a man-made mountain towering in the middle of the desert. This massive stone wall contains about 2.3 million stone blocks, weighing a total of about 6 million tons. Now, let's talk about the numbers that make modern engineers break into a cold sweat. The base of the pyramid is level within a deviation of a mere 1 centimeter over the entire 230-meter length. The ratio between its perimeter and height accurately encodes the mathematical constant pi, and most terrifyingly, it is aligned to true north with a precision higher than 3 minutes of arc. That is less than 1/15th of a degree. There are no architectural blueprints, no manuals, no CAD drawings, nothing. Only the silence of the stone. In 2018, a Harvard archaeologist named Glenn Dash proposed a theory. He said, the ancient Egyptians could have used the shadow method on the autumnal equinox. They drive a vertical pole called a gnomon into the ground, track its shadow moving with the sun, measure it, and boom, they have perfect north. Sounds plausible, right? Very elegant, very academic. But let's be realistic for a second. Sticking a pole in the sand is one thing. Maintaining that absolute precision on a scale of 6 million tons of stone, spanning decades of construction, where every layer of stone, every block of stone, must keep the correct direction without allowing for any cumulative error. That's not construction. That is a megalomaniacal obsession with precision, far beyond the capabilities of humans at that time. And if Giza were a singular, lucky shot, we might have been able to shrug it off. But the truth always loves to play with us. The Great Pyramid is not alone. Everywhere in the world, separated by deep oceans and thousands of years of history, among cultures that supposedly didn't have a single text message to contact each other, we find identical sky fanatics. In Ireland, 3200 BC, there is a stone passage tomb called Newgrange. The builders designed a narrow, long, dark passage. For what? So that on exactly one day a year, the morning of the winter solstice, a single ray of sunlight penetrates the entire corridor and lights up the central chamber for exactly 17 minutes. Do you understand what this requires? It's not just stacking stones and poking a hole. They had to know the exact angle of the rising sun before the first stone was even laid on the ground. Off by 1 millimeter, and the whole project becomes a meaningless pile of bricks. 5,000 years later, that stone clock still runs on time. On another hemisphere, at Chichen Itza, Mexico, the temple of Kukulkan stands there. Every spring and autumn equinox, light and shadow intertwine, crawling down the steps to form the image of a giant feathered serpent. That is not a random illusion. It is a shadow puppet play pre-programmed with engineering and geometry. Fly to Cambodia, 12th century, Angkor Wat. An entire massive temple complex sits there, stalking the sun. On the spring equinox, the sun rises directly over the peak of the central tower, framed perfectly like a sniper scope pointed straight at the universe. But here is the darkest part. The layout of this entire temple complex is said to accurately mirror the constellation Draco. And not the Draco of the 12th century, but the shape of this constellation in, 10,500 BC. Why did they build a giant mirror to reflect a sky that vanished tens of thousands of years ago? And the list doesn't stop. Abu Simbel in Egypt was carved straight into the cliff so that light shines on the statue of Rameses II on exactly 2 days each year, leaving the god of the underworld in darkness. The Sun Dagger at Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, uses massive stone slabs to filter light through spiral carvings on the summer and winter solstices. All are precise to within fractions of a degree. There is no room for the word roughly or approximately. Mainstream academia, from the comfort of air-conditioned rooms, explains it like this. Zorro. It's simple. They were agrarian societies. They had to look at the sky to know when to sow corn, when to harvest rice. I agree, but wait. Knowing when winter is coming by looking at the shadow of a tree is one thing. You can do that with a rock, a stick, and a few years of sitting idle. But aligning a mountain of 2.3 million blocks to true north with a 1/15th degree error? Designing a serpent out of shadows? Calculating the light trajectory in a narrowing corridor before building it? The difference between agricultural farming and building these structures is like the difference between you knowing to go home when the sun sets and you manually crafting an atomic clock precise to the millisecond. Both are used to tell time, but the level of sophistication is an abyss Did all these cultures independently find an obsessively accurate astronomy, or was there some knowledge more ancient and deeper that existed before them and was shared? If you think they were just lucky farmers, wait for it, because there is an object lying deep at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, a mossy and crustacean-covered artifact that will deliver a thunderous slap to the arrogance of the modern world. Let's fast forward the timeline. Leaving the sun-drenched deserts of Egypt, I will take you down into the murky, cold waters of the Mediterranean. Spring, 1901. A group of Greek divers is plunging off the coast of a small island called Antikythera, sandwiched between the southern tip of the Peloponnese and the island of Crete. Remember this, they were not romantic explorers looking for pirate treasure. They were miserable laborers, gambling their lives at a depth of 60 meters below sea level just to fumble for sponges to sell for money. But in that dark, cold, and thick deep, they stumbled upon something greater than any coral reef. A graveyard on the seabed, a Roman merchant ship that sank around the 1st century BC. It was loaded with things the elite of that time craved. Burly bronze statues, pure white marble statues, exquisite pottery, and glistening glassware. And of course, mixed in that glittering heap of ruins was an object pathetically ugly. A clod of fossilized metal, about the size of a shoebox. It was covered in crustaceans, rusted and decayed. It looked like nothing more than a piece of ocean vomit. And true to humanity's habit of judging a book by its cover, the researchers initially glanced at it, yawned, entered it into the catalog, and threw it into a dark corner in the archives of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. They were busy swooning over naked marble statues. Who would care about a dirty lump of rock? It lay there, silent, waiting for someone to have enough curiosity to look closely at the cracks of time. And when they looked, oh boy, the history of science had to be rewritten. Through the shell of calcium and limestone, people saw fissures, not natural fissures. They were gears, dozens of bronze gears, intertwined with tiny triangular teeth. The more they peeled it back, the more they sweated. Over 30 gears meshed with a chilling degree of precision. This arrangement was not the work of a drunken blacksmith trying to make a toy. Every angle, every joint screamed 2 words: purpose and engineering. It wasn't a useless decorative item, it was a machine. The Antikythera mechanism, the oldest analog computer ever known to man. Let that truth sink into your brain for a moment. We are talking about the 2nd century BC, a time when, according to textbooks, humans wore togas, fought with bronze swords, and believed that thunder was thrown by the gods on Mount Olympus. Yet someone had built a mechanical computer. How did it work? You just turn a small hand crank on the side. The machine wakes up. It calculates the positions of the sun and the moon against the background of the zodiac constellations. It accurately predicts to the day when solar and lunar eclipses will occur. It even counts down the time to the ancient Olympic Games. But here is what makes modern mechanical engineers kneel in respect. Our moon doesn't orbit the Earth in a perfect circle. It orbits in an elliptical path. This means sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it goes slow. To simulate this irregular movement with metal, the designer of the Antikythera mechanism used a technique called epicyclic gearing. Simply put, they mounted a gear on top of another gear, rotating on different axes to compensate for the moon's acceleration. Do you understand how incredible this is? This isn't simple metal carving. This is applied celestial mechanics. Its creator wasn't just a craftsman. They had to be a great mathematician, an astronomer who saw through the sky, understood the complex geometry of eclipses, calculated the anomalies of lunar velocity, and then captured all those cosmic laws, stuffing them into a small brass box. This concept of epicyclic gearing, the modern world thought it had just invented it during the Industrial Revolution. As it turns out, ancient ghosts were playing with it 2,000 years ago. For decades, this machine was like an arrogant challenge, taunting every effort of the world's smartest minds to decode it. It was too complex, too sophisticated, and too anomalous for its time. And to truly see through the soul of this mechanical monster, humans had to use technology originally built to track cosmic black holes. Do you know what the most ridiculous part of this entire story is? It's the fact that we have to use the most advanced technologies of the 20th and 21st centuries just to understand what people living 2,000 years ago were actually doing. For decades, the Antikythera mechanism sat there, silent and defiant. The naked eye couldn't see through the thick, fossilized crust. It wasn't until the 1970s that X-rays were used to peek inside. Then, in the 2000s, computed tomography, CT scans, finally peeled back the layers of hidden detail that X-rays simply couldn't handle. But the real game changer, the madness of modern mathematics, only exploded in 2024. Researchers at the University of Glasgow decided to join the fray. And what weapon do you think they used to decode this artifact? A magnifying glass? A feather brush? No. Professor Graham Wone and Dr. Joseph Bailey brought something you'd never expect in the world of archaeology: Bayesian statistical analysis. If that term sounds familiar, you're right. This is exactly the transcendental mathematical method used by the LIGO Observatory to detect gravitational waves, the ripples in space-time caused by two black holes colliding in some hidden corner of the universe. They used black hole hunting technology to study a rusty lump of bronze. Sounds like a great joke of history, doesn't it? The problem was this. On the calendar dial of the machine was a bronze ring that had been shattered. Only pathetic fragments remained. Along its circumference were tiny holes drilled manually. Directly counting the holes on an incomplete circle is impossible. Yet, the number of holes was a vital key because it would reveal which calendar the machine was tracking. Whose calendar? By applying LIGO's statistical methods, Glasgow confirmed a cold truth. That ring almost certainly contained 354 or 355 holes. This number crushed all previous arguments. It wasn't 365 holes following the Egyptian solar calendar. It wasn't 360 holes as previously suspected. 354 holes correspond perfectly to the ancient Greek lunar calendar. And the position of each individual hole, their microscopic size within a cramped space, required what Dr. Bailey called extraordinarily precise measurement techniques and an incredibly steady hand. But science is a battlefield where no ceasefire is ever ordered. Just a year later, in 2025, the University of Mar del Plata in Argentina threw a smoke bomb into the party. They ran computer simulations and concluded, wait a minute, this triangular tooth design is very prone to jamming during operation. They argued that this machine probably wasn't a daily measurement tool, but rather a symbolic toy, something for the elite to show off at banquets to prove their superior intellect. Do you see the irony here? Whether it was a working tool or just a theoretical machine, the naked truth remains unchanged. Someone in the ancient world possessed a mind ahead of their time. They had enough astronomical knowledge to design it, enough metallurgical skill to manufacture it, and the mathematical mechanical understanding to make it run smoothly, at least on the drawing boards. And now, we enter the scariest part of the story, the part I call the evolutionary anomaly. Look at our technological history. Everything is hereditary. Before the sleek iPhone in your hand, we had Nokia brick phones, rotary phones, and the telegraph. Every machine leaves an evolutionary trace. We see the clumsiness of prototypes before reaching perfection. But the Antikythera mechanism? Absolutely not. It is a ghost with no lineage. There are no crude prototypes leading to it in the archaeological record. No version 1.0 or 2.0. It abruptly appears in the timeline as a tool already perfected to an extreme, irrationally sophisticated degree. And after it, what did the students learn from this machine? Nothing. That knowledge, that tradition of gear making, completely evaporated from humanity. For the next 1,400 years, the world produced no device that could rival it in complexity. It wasn't until the era of mechanical clocks in Renaissance Europe that we timidly touched that realm again. A great legacy was severed. Why? The answer lies in the ruthlessness of time and human nature. This machine survived, paradoxically, because the ship carrying it sank. That's right. Its existence is a joke of probability. If the Roman captain that year had avoided the storm, if the ship had docked safely, this machine might have been delivered to some aristocrat. It would have been used for a while. Then, when a gear jammed or rusted, it would have been tossed into a corner. Back then, bronze was an expensive material. Do you know what humans do with broken bronze machines? They melt them down. They melt down mechanical masterpieces to cast a pan, a jar, or a mindless sword. That was the recycling of the ancient world. Libraries burned to ash. Great minds took their formulas to the grave. The archaeological record we proudly cherish today is, in fact, just a tattered scrap of what actually once existed. The deep ocean, with its salt water and sediment, accidentally became the greatest preservation cocoon, saving this machine from the slaughterhouse of human progress. So the question that keeps us awake at night is, if a random shipwreck could preserve a 2,000-year-old mechanical computer, how many other sci-fi devices were crushed, melted, and buried forever under the ashes of ignorance? And the truth is, Antikythera isn't the only proof that we are blind to our own past. The vast pattern of history doesn't stop at bronze machines or pyramids. Our negligence spans every material, every civilization. Look at Roman concrete, what the ancients called opus cementitium. The harbors, breakwaters, and domes cast by the Romans are, today, after more than 2 millennia of enduring the most brutal sea waves, tougher and sturdier than the day they were first poured. Meanwhile, our 20th century pride, reinforced concrete, in a few decades it starts to crack, rust, and requires maintenance costing billions of dollars. Modern materials scientists, with their sterile labs and electron microscopes, spent decades scratching their heads, trying to figure out what spell those ancients in tunics cast into their cement. And do you know when the truth was revealed? Just yesterday, 2023. It was discovered that the Romans didn't mix materials haphazardly as we once mocked. They intentionally mixed tiny lime clasts, calcium, into the concrete at extremely high temperatures. Why? To create a magic trick that modern engineers call self-healing capability. When a Roman structure cracks due to earthquakes or time, rainwater seeps in. The water reacts with those buried calcium clasts, creating new calcium carbonate, and boom, the crack is automatically filled. The concrete patches itself before the destruction can spread. We, with all the complacency of the AI and space travel era, only understood this complex physical mechanism a few years ago. But the Romans, they were manipulating it 2,000 years ago. This event, along with the ghost named Antikythera, has dealt a fatal blow to our arrogance. As one researcher bitterly admitted, the Antikythera mechanism is one of the strongest arguments against the idea that the ancient world was primitive. It is flesh and blood proof, or rather, bronze and lime proof, that is undeniable. We have been and are constantly underestimating the great minds of the distant past. We assume the path of human intellectual evolution is a straight line upward, that today is always smarter than yesterday. But history is not a straight line. It is a bloody sine wave graph, rising to peaks, then collapsing into dark ages, everything burned away, and then survivors clumsily picking up the scraps to start all over again. And this terrible pattern of human underestimation, ironically, is being accelerated by modern technology itself. A technology that didn't exist on an archaeological scale 10 years ago is currently tearing through nature's veil to slap us with horrifying truths. We call it LiDAR. Researchers fly over the jungles of Guatemala and the Amazon, aiming lethal laser pulses from the sky to pierce through the dense canopy. Areas where explorers have trekked, swinging machetes for hundreds of years, reporting back, "There's nothing here, just wilderness and mosquitoes." But when the laser redraws the terrain, what is beneath that humus? Entire buried civilizations, massive megacities, complex transportation networks, agricultural systems capable of feeding millions. They lie there, invisible to every ground survey ever conducted, sleeping peacefully while waiting for the judgment of light. How many truths written in today's history textbooks will become a joke tomorrow? When you look at monuments aligned to the stars with unthinkable precision, when you try to turn the gears of a 2,000-year-old computer, or when you see ghost cities rising from beneath the jungle canopy thanks to laser light, you must admit one thing. We are not the only pinnacle of humanity. We are just late survivors wandering through a giant museum called Earth, where those who came before once touched the stars. Imagine this, 2024. 4. New Orleans. Darkness blankets a room at Tulane University, where the only light comes from the computer screen of a PhD student named Luke Auld Thomas. He is doing what we all do when desperate or stuck, scrolling through the deep search pages of Google. Not the first page where easy truths are displayed, not the 5th page, but page 16. Be honest, you and I don't even crawl past page 3 to find a good pizza place. But Luke was looking for something else. He was scouring public LiDAR data. For those who don't know, LiDAR is like digital magic, a system that emits thousands of laser pulses per second from an airplane, scanning through dense foliage and peeling back vegetation like an orange skin to reveal the flesh of the ground beneath. And right there on that snubbed 16th page, he stumbled upon a 2013 Mexican government environmental survey file belonging to a carbon measurement project called Alianza M-Red-D+. Do you know what the most ironic truth of history is? It's that no one involved in that project back then was looking for ancient ruins. They were just counting trees. That data file had sat gathering digital dust in a public database for over 10 years. But when Luke and his advisor, Marcello Canuto, threw that data through the lens of archaeological analysis, boom. A ghost woke up. Right in the middle of the state of Campeche on the Yucatan Peninsula, completely swallowed by dense rainforest, was a megacity. It wasn't small. Over 6,500 structures spread across 130 square kilometers, pyramids, plazas, amphitheaters, ball courts, massive man-made reservoirs created by damming, and causeways connecting bustling urban districts. They named it Valeriana, a massive Maya capital that was home to 30,000 to 50,000 souls at its peak, around 740 to 850 AD. The population there back then was actually denser than that same region is now. For centuries, local farmers tilled the soil, sowed seeds, and harvested right on top of pyramids without knowing. Aerial photos were blind to it. Satellite images were useless. Expeditions carrying machetes passed right by and missed it. Even a modern highway runs right past it, as Luke himself sarcastically told the media. The government never knew about it. Ridiculous, isn't it? We always boast that we've mapped every inch of this planet. No, we've found everything already. Valeriana threw a slap right at that arrogance. But hey, Valeriana wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the opening shot for a series of discoveries tearing up and rewriting textbooks in real time. Leave Mexico and fly to South America. In January 2024, a researcher named Stefan Rostein from the French National Center for Scientific Research announced findings at the Upano Valley, right in the heart of the Ecuadorian Amazon basin. For 40 years, Rostein had been trudging through the jungle excavating, and for those 4 decades, colleagues smirked and told him, "Rostein, there's nothing there. The Amazon is a pristine wilderness untouched by humans. It's too dense, too wet, too harsh to foster a complex civilization." Then Rostein pointed LiDAR at it. The lasers swept away the jungle's veil of lies, revealing a massive urban network. Great mounds up to 150 meters long and 8 meters high, connected by a network of wide roads and surrounded by agricultural terraces. The age, about 2,500 years. Its scale rivals the most famous classic Maya cities. Do you understand what this means? The Amazon was never a pristine wilderness. It was an ecological machine intentionally designed, planned, and managed to feed millions of people. By February 2025, Vinicius Periparo of the Brazilian National Institute for Space Research released LiDAR scan results for the entire Amazon basin. Thousands of earthworks, geometric enclosures, and previously unknown agricultural features. Initial results suggest the scale of pre-Columbian settlement in the Amazon has been underestimated by an order of magnitude. An order of magnitude, meaning the actual numbers could be 10 times higher, 10 times the population, 10 times the settlement area, 10 times the engineering scale. Everything just lay there hidden in the shadows of the canopy for 500 years, invisible to every technique humans had, making us blind until LiDAR appeared. If you still think the Amazon jungle is too vast and inaccessible so missing things is understandable, let me introduce you to another case, Machu Picchu. That's right. Machu Picchu, one of the most studied archaeological sites on the planet, photographed from every damn angle, trampled by millions of tourists every year, and overturned by experts for over a century. Yet in 2024 and 2025, under the leadership of Dominika Sieczkowska, University of Warsaw, a drone mounted with LiDAR glided over the area. And guess what? It discovered 12 buildings completely invisible, hidden under the jungle vegetation, located right next to the main citadel. A century of academic boasting. Yet 12 structures still sat there, silently mocking them, waiting for someone to point a laser at them. Furthermore, at the nearby ceremonial complex of Cochabamba, less than 5 miles from Machu Picchu, LiDAR exposed a sophisticated network of underground stone water channels, a hydraulic system more complex than anything ever recorded. It turns out the Incas were far, far greater master engineers than our limited understanding suggested. Every time we point LiDAR at a jungle, we find cities. Every time we scan, the Maya grow larger, the Amazon becomes more urbanized, Machu Picchu becomes more complex. And this technology has only really joined the archaeological fray for less than a decade. We are right at the starting line of a cognitive revolution. But LiDAR has a fatal weakness. It can only see what is on the ground. It is blind to the water. And most importantly, it cannot see through things that have been intentionally buried, like what we are digging up right now on the other side of the globe, at the very place that started this entire cognitive crisis, the place we spent so much time dissecting in the previous documentary, the place that shattered the entire model of human history. It turns out that impossible construction didn't stand alone. It was part of a network. And that network is larger, deeper than any of us dared to imagine. If you watched our previous documentary, you probably remember that we spent a significant amount of time dissecting Göbekli Tepe, a magnificent architectural structure in Turkey, proudly existing at a point in time when, according to textbooks, it wasn't allowed to exist. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, weighing dozens of tons, carved with chillingly sharp reliefs of wild animals. They were arranged in perfect circles about 11,500 years ago. Who built them? According to traditional academia, It was the work of hunter-gatherers, primitive people without agriculture, who didn't know how to make pottery, had no metal tools, and moved from place to place. Göbekli Tepe punched right through the traditional chronological order, proving an ironic truth. The temple came before the farm. Religion and macro-architecture were born before we even knew how to plant a seed in the ground. At the time, I told you that Göbekli Tepe was an anomaly, a bug in the matrix of history, a singular exception challenging the timeline. But tonight, I owe you a correction. And this is a correction that will make you shiver. Göbekli Tepe is not an anomaly. It is not alone. It wasn't a random miracle of hunters who suddenly felt like throwing stones at each other and creating a temple. Göbekli Tepe is actually just a node in a massive network. And that network, even as we speak, continues to expand like an unfillable crack on the wall of history. About 35 kilometers east of Göbekli Tepe, on a barren limestone plateau overlooking the plains of southeastern Turkey, is a place called Karahan Tepe. Under the auspices of the Turkish government, the Stone Hills, Tash Tepeler project has been overturning this region since the early 2000s under the direction of Professor Necmi Karul. And what they've dug up, well, it doesn't just confirm what Göbekli Tepe was screaming in our faces, it pulls the story so far back that no historian dared to anticipate it. Karahan Tepe dates from 9,400 to 8,000 BC and was bustling with people for a millennium and a half. Does it have monolithic T-shaped megaliths? Yes. Does it have elaborate animal carvings? Yes. But the point that makes Karahan Tepe outshine its sibling Göbekli Tepe lies in the technique. While Göbekli Tepe consists of enclosures built independently on the ground, Karahan Tepe is a complex environment carved directly into the bedrock. Chambers were hewn from living stone, creating a grotesque architectural style that perfectly blends macro construction with cave sculpture. Imagine stepping underground and encountering this. A giant human statue, 2.45 meters tall, over 8 feet. The largest known sculpture from the pre-pottery Neolithic period. Its face is depicted with terrifying realism, a level of artistic sophistication that people once insisted humans back then weren't evolved enough to achieve. Inside the vaults, stone-carved human heads with vivid expressions protrude from the walls, surrounding the T-pillars. The visual effect? Extremely creepy, like you are being judged by a silent stone jury from within the mountain walls. By October 2025, Karahan Tepe threw another bomb at academia. For the first time, a human face was found carved directly onto a T-shaped stone pillar. A face with a proudly hooked nose, deep eyes, and a sharp jawline, staring down those who dare disturb it from a height of 135 centimeters. These ancient humans weren't just worshiping animals or invisible forces. They were honoring themselves, carving their own portraits into eternity. And do you know what's crazier than the statues? Stairs. The newest areas excavated here reveal what might be the oldest staircase system ever found, carved monolithically from stone and integrated perfectly into the architectural system. What does this mean? It means these spaces weren't just built for beauty or pure spiritual symbolism. They were intentionally designed to direct human movement. Architecture was commanding their footsteps, To do this requires a level of three-dimensional spatial planning thinking far beyond what we ever dared attribute to cavemen. But remember, Karahan Tepe is just one piece of the puzzle. The Tash Tepeler project has identified at least 12 related sites stretching across a 200-kilometer area in the Şanlıurfa region. Stick this number in your head: 12 megalithic supercomplexes. At Sabers, a relief was found depicting a person strangling a leopard. At Sefertepe in November 2025, 2 human faces, one high relief, one low relief, carved on square stone blocks were revealed. Their style is distinctly different from Göbekli Tepe or Karahan Tepe, proving each of these areas was like a city-state, with its own artistic tradition but still faithful to a common cultural framework. Also at Sefertepe, they found a polished black serpentinite stone bead carved with 2 human faces on opposite sides. An exquisite piece of jewelry that could be carried in a pocket, crafted alongside multi-ton megaliths. Meanwhile, at the Göbekli Tepe headquarters, archaeologists are still striking gold. Metaphorically, of course. In 2025, they pulled out a 12,000-year-old human statue tucked into a wall, and a stone wild boar painted in red, white, and black, one of the oldest painted statues in human history. Its pedestal is covered in H symbols, snakes, crescent moons, and human faces. Around it, grinding stones, flint sickles, and plant remains have exposed a truth. These builders might have already started early farming. The boundary between the primitive hunter and the civilized farmer is blurring to a ridiculous degree. The world finally cannot look away anymore. 6 million people lined up at the Colosseum in Rome to see the Göbekli Tepe exhibition in late 2024. Then it goes to Berlin in 2026, the UK, and Tokyo in 2027. All are starving to see the legend in stone. So, what is the Tash Tepeler network whispering to us? That 12,000 years ago, a vast region in Turkey was home to a population with the logistical capability to build dozens of macro stone complexes. They shared a common symbolic language, the H symbol, the T pillar. They maintained these construction sites for centuries. They carved art with incredible sophistication and planned architecture with absolute precision. And here is the most chilling part. We have only excavated less than 5% of Göbekli Tepe's area after a decade. What is still buried under those hills could take another century to fully bring up. In the previous documentary, I asked you, if hunter-gatherers could build Göbekli Tepe, what else could they do? Today we have half the answer. They built at least a dozen more giant sites exactly like it. But let's thread it all together. The interlocking stones without mortar, the cities vanishing under lidar jungles, the sunken continents, and now a network of 12,000-year-old super temples. This pattern points a bloody finger toward a conclusion that is extremely uncomfortable for mainstream historians. It suggests that what textbooks keep peddling as the beginning of civilization is actually not the beginning at all. Let's pause. Step back, take a deep breath, and look at the big picture, like a detective standing before a board full of crime scene photos, scattered clues, and connecting them with red threads. Until now, we've often looked at these ruins as individual curiosities, isolated mysteries, carefully packaged, neatly labeled and tucked into different drawers of various academic departments so that academia can sleep soundly. But today, I want you and me to look at them all as a single body of evidence, observed from a global altitude. Let's see what we have on this board. In Lebanon, 3 great blocks, each weighing 800 tons, lifted and fitted together 7 meters above the ground with the precision of razor cuts. Nearby, a 1,650-ton megalithic monster still lies silent in the quarry, partially carved. Those who started this project intended to move it, and they certainly had a way to do it. The greatest later Roman engineers came and built a magnificent temple over it, but they never ever could replicate the megalithic foundation beneath. In Peru, Sacsayhuaman, massive granite walls interlocking like 3D puzzle pieces without a single drop of mortar. Some stone surfaces show vitrification, meaning they were melted at temperatures exceeding 1,100 degrees Celsius. How? When asked, the Incas themselves, those whom textbooks credit for the construction, shook their heads and replied, "Not us, the gods did it." In Bolivia, Puma Punku, located at a towering altitude of 12,800 feet, andesite blocks, one of the hardest and most stubborn rocks on the planet, bear cuts as sharp as modern machinery, standardized modular components, perfectly spaced drill holes, all created by a culture with no strong metal tools, no wheels, and no written technical blueprints. And that's just on land. Look down into the pitch-black deep waters where history is truly buried. Beneath the Baltic Sea, a 10,000-year-old stone wall stretching nearly a kilometer, allegedly built by a group of fewer than 5,000 people. Off the coast of Brittany, 9 meters deep in the cold Atlantic, is a 7,000-year-old granite wall weighing 3,300 tons. At the bottom of the Pacific off Japan, Yonaguni, a massive stepped structure submerged 25 meters, which could only have been built when this was still dry land during the height of the last ice age. Beneath the North Sea, an entire continent named Doggerland once existed. Ancient DNA and sediment proves it was once full of temperate forests and life 16,000 years ago, millennia earlier than we ever allowed it to exist. An Egyptian megacity named Thonis Herakleion, once mocked by scholars as an imaginary product of the historian Herodotus, was eventually found under 30 feet of water, 4 miles from shore. We have 400 pyramids surrounding Xi'an, China, 40,000 dolmens swarming the Korean peninsula, thousands of stone circles scattered across the scorched Sahel of Africa, and freakishly similar dolmen designs appearing on every inhabited continent. Don't forget the sky. The Great Pyramid of Giza locks onto true north with an error of less than 1/15 of a degree. The Newgrange tomb in Ireland catches a single beam of sunlight shining straight into the spiritual vault on exactly one morning each year. Chichen Itza summons a serpent of shadow crawling down the steps on the equinoxes. Angkor Wat accurately reflects the position of the constellation Draco. But the sky of 10,500 BC, not when it was supposedly built, and the Antikythera mechanism, a bronze mechanical computer from the 2nd century BC, tracks the lunar calendar with a complexity that astounds 21st century physicists. Nothing rivaling it appeared for the next 1,400 years. This is the evidence. Not a few anomalies for you to shrug off. It is a pattern, a mathematical, architectural, and astronomical pattern spanning 6 continents, across tens of thousands of years. The traditional archaeological framework has a very good defensive game, process each case individually. Baalbek? Oh, that's Roman. Sacsayhuaman? Kilki or Inca? Puma Punku? Tiwanaku civilization? Giza pyramids? 4th dynasty Egyptian label? Göbekli Tepe? Just a bunch of hunter-gatherers on a sudden whim. Each explanation, if placed in its own sealed box, sounds perfectly plausible, logical, evidence-supported, and extremely safe. But my dear friend, the anomalies are breeding faster than traditional boxes can swallow them. Every year, LiDAR planes whip laser pulses down at jungles and pull out new cities. Every year, the timeline of human capability is pushed further back into the dark zone. Every year we discover something that was yesterday labeled science fiction. So, what if we tear off the labels? There is an alternative viewpoint, a hypothesis that isn't absolute truth, but it makes these pieces fit together chillingly well. What if there really was a global knowledge network that existed before the Ice Age? I'm not talking about a centralized empire with rulers in silver robes. I'm talking about a network of cultures connected by seafaring, sharing the same type of megalithic stone construction technology, the same astronomical knowledge. They built brilliant cities along ancient coastlines at a time when Earth's sea level was 120 meters lower than today. And then the apocalypse struck. About 12,800 years ago, a violent climate change event named the Younger Dryas slammed into the planet, likely triggered by fragments of a giant comet. Ice melted. The sea roared. Water levels rose at a catastrophic speed, swallowing entire coastal regions. The centers of civilization sank into the eternal darkness of the ocean. Survivors fled deep inland. They carried with them the tattered fragments of a lost world's memory. They tried to encode that knowledge into the only thing not cut down by time and water: stone. They erected Göbekli Tepe. They passed down stories of the Great Flood, something that appears in the religion of every culture. They locked the stars into architecture to warn posterity. What textbooks call the glorious beginning of civilization was, in fact, just pathetic attempts to restart from the ashes. That is the story that people like Graham Hancock have screamed themselves hoarse over for decades. And it is also the story that mainstream science has plugged its ears to with contempt. You can't blame them. The weight of evidence must match the madness of the claim. There isn't a single piece of plastic from before the Ice Age, no written records. It's all circumstantial evidence. But the mainstream is breaking into a cold sweat, and they are silently shifting. Göbekli Tepe slapped the Neolithic chronology. Amazon through the LiDAR lens slapped South American history. The battle over water erosion, not wind, on the body of the Sphinx still has no end. Evidence of platinum sediment layers and the Younger Dryas comet impact crater is mounting. The most honest and naked truth right now is, we do not know. Traditional explanation is becoming forced and patchy. The places containing the ultimate answers, under the deep continental shelves, remain untouched. The restart hypothesis may never be proven, but one thing has been proven for sure. The past is grander, weirder, and scarier than anything we dared imagine 10 years ago. The deepest mystery connecting this historical mess doesn't lie in a carved stone or a myth. How does it feel to realize we might be the amnesia generation of a much greater story? Let's talk about mathematics. I know. No one wants to be dragged back to those boring high school geometry lessons. But hear me out. Because the math we are about to dig up isn't found in black ink on white paper. It is carved into stone blocks weighing several tons, enduring the ravages of time, like a suicide note that the ancients insisted we must read. Look at the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you take the circumference of the base and divide it by twice its height, the number you get is 3.1416. That's right. That is the number pi. Pi. And this ratio is accurate down to 4 decimal places. Step inside, measure the king's chamber, and you will stumble upon phi. Phi. The golden ratio of 1.618. This is the number that runs the universe. It dictates the spiral of a nautilus shell, the branching of tree limbs, and how sunflower seeds arrange themselves on a flower head. These numbers weren't scribbled on a tattered papyrus scroll. They were crystallized into the physical structure of the building itself. Traditional scholars might shrug and say, oh, if you build a pyramid with a certain slope, pi will automatically appear as an inevitable byproduct. Plausible enough. The debate over whether this was intentional or accidental has lasted for a century. But if the pyramid was an accident, then how do we explain Göbekli Tepe? Recently, a computer model in the Cambridge Archaeological Journal exposed a bone-chilling truth. The 3 main enclosures at Göbekli Tepe are perfectly connected by an equilateral triangle. This entire complex wasn't a build-as-you-go project by some idle hunter-gatherers. It was conceived as a unified geometric design from the very first day. Those builders had to pull ropes to measure distances and establish absolutely precise angles. They worked with abstract geometric concepts, something textbooks say humans back then didn't have enough brain folds to understand. And then we have Puma Punku in Bolivia. The H-shaped andesite blocks here have a feature that would make any modern engineer break into a sweat. They are interchangeable modular components, just like giant Lego pieces. The blocks were carved from a master template with extremely tight tolerances, so that any block could fit perfectly as a replacement for another. What does this imply? It implies the existence of a shared measurement system, a standardized unit, and a strict quality control system to ensure that different stone carvers at different times all followed the exact same technical drawing. They did that with stone tools and bronze chisels? Do you believe it? Now, look up at the sky. Robert Bauval's Orion correlation theory once pointed out that the 3 pyramids of Giza perfectly reflect the positions of the 3 stars in Orion's belt. This arrangement looks slightly off if you look at the modern sky. But Bauval rewound the astronomical time machine. The alignment becomes eerily perfect if you map the sky back to around 10,500 BC. Right at the lowest point in the cycle of the precession of Orion. Even crazier? That is also exactly the time when the Sphinx, if it was originally carved with the head of a lion, would have looked directly at the constellation Leo rising on the eastern horizon on the morning of the vernal equinox. There it is again, 10,500 BC. The period immediately following the Younger Dryas cataclysm. This pulls us into deeper waters, the phenomenon of precession. Our Earth's axis isn't stationary. It wobbles slowly, like a toy top about to fall, creating a grand cycle that lasts approximately 25,920 years. To realize this shift, you can't just sit and watch the stars for a few decades. It requires patient and persistent astronomical observation over millennia. Someone had to track, store data, and compare the sky of their great-great-grandparents with the sky of their descendants hundreds of generations later. Textbooks say the Greek astronomer Hipparchus discovered precession in 130 BC. That's funny. In the legendary book Hamlet's Mill, 1969, Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von de Chend pointed out that knowledge of this cycle was fragmented and encoded into myths across the globe. Look at the repeating numbers in ancient legends: 72, 108, 432, 2,160, 25,920. They appear in Norse mythology, in Mesopotamian religion, spread to India, and cross the ocean all the way to Central America. These aren't just random numbers made up for fun. This is a library of astronomical data, hidden under the cloak of fairy tales and myths, passed down orally for thousands of years to ensure it was never forgotten. But perhaps the most glaring evidence of a common blueprint is the technique of polygonal masonry. This technique is a nightmare for ordinary masons, fitting irregularly shaped stone blocks. No two blocks are alike, tightly together without mortar, so snug that you can't even fit a razor blade into the gaps. This structure distributes force wonderfully and is extremely earthquake resistant. Now, look at where this eerie technique appears. At the Sacsayhuaman fortress in Peru, at the Delphi sanctuary in Greece, in the massive walls of Alatri, central Italy, at Hattusa, the Hittite capital in Turkey, and even on Easter Island, isolated in the middle of the Pacific. These cultures are separated by thousands of miles of ocean and up to 4,000 years of history. Incas, Greeks, Hittites, Rapa Nui. They spoke different languages, prayed to different gods, lived in completely different social contexts. Yet they cut stone, treated surfaces, beveled curved edges, and finished earthquake-proof walls with almost identical aesthetic and technical standards. Mainstream archaeology calls this convergent evolution. They explain that stone is stone, and polygons are the most optimal way to fit them together. So different cultures just fumbled their way to the same answer. Sure, that sounds plausible. Maybe they did invent it themselves, but the haunting similarity in the surface finish and the joining angles makes it look less like a historical coincidence. It looks as if groups of masons across continents were holding the same manual, using the same geometry, and following a single global technical standard. We can keep our eyes closed and cling to so-called convergent evolution. But I have to tell you a secret. There is a new discovery, something unmasked in the last few years, that is about to choke that convergence hypothesis to death. Because we have just discovered that the great underground cities in Cappadocia, those giant ant nests dozens of stories deep that we shivered through in our previous documentary, are not alone. There are others. Many, many others. And the latest site they just found, it isn't just a shelter. It might be the largest, grandest, and most terrifying man-made underground structure humanity has ever known on Earth. Do you remember Derinkuyu? In our previous documentary, I took you down into the silent darkness of Cappadocia, Turkey, We fumbled through 18 underground levels, stabbing deep into the earth. I showed you the plunging ventilation shafts, secret wells, storage rooms, livestock pens, and even cold chapels. I pointed out the massive circular stone doors, weighing tons, designed to roll out and seal the corridors from the inside. A perfect locking mechanism to protect 20,000 people from whatever hell was roaring on the surface. At the time, both you and I thought Derinkuyu was a miracle, a singular, extraordinary wonder born of desperation. But tonight, I'm afraid we have to recalibrate our perspective, because the truth always has a very dark sense of humor. Derinkuyu was not extraordinary for Cappadocia. For this godforsaken land, Derinkuyu was ordinary. Look broader. This entire region is like a giant sponge riddled with underground settlements. We know of over 200 sites. Over 200. Some are just cute little mouse holes 2 or 3 stories deep. But others, they are laughing at Derinkuyu in terms of depth and complexity. And the craziest thing is, new sites are still being tripped over constantly. Take 2015 as an example. Near the town of Nevşehir, a construction crew was happily digging the foundation for a housing project right in the shadow of a hilltop castle. The sound of excavators rang out. Earth and rock crumbled and then clink. They hit something. What the construction crew found that day buried that entire real estate project forever. An underground city. Initial surveys gave even the bravest people chills. It appeared to be over 100 meters deep and stretched across an area of nearly 5 million square feet. Let that number sink into your brain for a bit. If these estimates are accurate, this massive black hole in Nevşehir would swallow Derinkuyu. It would rightfully become the greatest underground structure humans have ever accidentally dug into. The Turkish government immediately pulled the emergency brake, suspended all construction, and cordoned off the entire area with the label Archaeological Investigation. But here's the interesting part. Even as you listen to me now, less than half of that site has been explored. Massive areas are still tightly sealed. Why? Officials will tell you it's due to structural concerns. But you and I understand, sometimes there are corridors so dark that no one has the courage to shine a flashlight and keep walking. What lies sleeping in those blockaded underground branches remains an information black hole. The true scale of the Nevşehir complex might take us decades just to finish a rough map. Now, let's put aside the overwhelm of size to talk about the minds of those who created them. The engineering behind these cities deserves a respectful bow, rather than just a superficial nod. Yes, I know. Geologists will be quick to explain that Derinkuyu and its siblings were carved from tuff. It's a relatively soft volcanic rock, a remnant of eruptions from the Earth's core in the ancient past. Tuff is soft enough that you can carve it with the most basic tools. That's not wrong. But hey, if I give you a fruit knife and a potato, you can peel it, but you can't carve it into an Antikythera mechanism. The sophistication in the design of these cities far exceeds the usual rock-pecking of prehistoric man. We are talking about masterpieces of environmental engineering. Networks of ventilation shafts run from the deepest levels, where sunlight is a luxury concept, straight to the surface. They pump fresh, breathable air through miles of winding corridors. Some of these shafts play a dual role. They are plunging wells that strike directly into the groundwater. That was the lifeblood sustaining tens of thousands of people buried for weeks or months while waiting for the disaster above them to pass. Think about it. No exhaust fans, no electric motors, no circuit boards, just geometry and physics applied with chilling precision. The amount of air circulation was calculated so perfectly that even on the 18th level of hell, the atmosphere remains stable, with no toxic gas buildup. That's not all. If some enemy made it through the surface defenses, what would the people do? Run and pray? No. Every underground level was a completely independent fortress. Residents simply retreated deeper, pushing massive round stones to block the corridors right behind them. These doors were designed so that they were absolutely impossible to open from the outside. The downward tunnels were intentionally bottlenecked, forcing invaders to enter in single file, making them perfect target practice for the defense forces waiting there. Level by level, nook by nook, independent ventilation and water sources. This was not the improvisation of a panicked crowd. My friends, this is military engineering. It is strategic thinking forged and sharpened in blood and fire over countless generations. This is the masterpiece of those who once survived the apocalypse and are coldly planning to survive it countless times more. But of course, we have a small problem with history textbooks: traditional timelines. Oh, I always love that word. It sounds so safe. Claim that the first pickaxes to dig into Cappadocia belonged to the Phrygians about 2,800 years ago. The Phrygians wandered through central Anatolia in the 8th and 7th centuries BC. And boom, they are credited for this entire wonder. Later, Byzantine Christians, fleeing bloody purges and Arab raids, found them and expanded them further. A neat, perfect story. Except, it's riddled with holes. If you dive into the deepest, most ancient parts of Derinkuyu, you won't find so much as a broken bowl or a tattered rag from the Phrygians. Moreover, the stonework techniques at these deep levels are completely out of sync with the upper levels. Even the design philosophy radiates a different, more alien aura. Some researchers have begun whispering a hypothesis that makes traditional academia flush with anger that those deep levels have sat there since long, long before the Phrygians appeared. That later cultures were simply the lucky ones who hit the jackpot, moved in, and expanded on a pre-perfected technical framework. Proving this? A real nightmare. Underground is the worst environment for dating. Organic materials for carbon-14 analysis are almost non-existent. Sediment layers have been churned up by millennia of human reuse, cleaning, and repair. But the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. The silence of the deepest rock layers is screaming a question at us. If the Phrygians were truly the master architects, why didn't they leave even a single fingerprint in the most core foundations? And why, the deeper you go into the belly of the earth, does everything feel more and more like the work of a completely different intelligence? If by now you still think Cappadocia is just a local anomaly, a group of paranoid agoraphobics deciding to dig holes together, then I'm afraid you've underestimated history's irony. Buckle up. We are leaving Turkey and flying straight to southeast China, landing in a peaceful countryside called Longu in Zhejiang province. In 1992, there was a farmer there named Wu Anai. This guy, like many generations of villagers, grew up beside the bottomless ponds in the area. One fine day, perhaps out of boredom or just wanting to catch a big load of fish, Wu Anai decided to bring a pump and drain one of those natural ponds. He set up the pump. The water gradually receded. But what appeared beneath the mud was not moss or a few gasping fish. As the water level dropped, sunlight for the first time in thousands of years struck the stone walls. Then, massive pillars emerged. Then, a vault. My friend, that was no pond. That was the flooded remains of a colossal underground excavation site. And Wu and I had just accidentally swung open the door to a complex of 24 man-made caves carved entirely by hand. Come inside with me. The first feeling is one of overwhelming awe. The Longu Caves span a massive area, 30,000 square meters. The ceilings soar up to 30 meters, high enough for you to fit an entire 10-story building inside without touching the top. But here is the detail that makes modern engineers scratch their heads until their scalps are raw. Look closely at the walls. Do you see anything? The entire interior surface, walls, ceilings, pillars, is covered in parallel grooves. They are so uniform, precise, and consistent that it's haunting. It doesn't look like the chaotic chipping of thousands of tired laborers. It suggests a systematic carving technique applied with a soulless, cold, mechanical regularity. The volume of rock removed and hauled away from this place is estimated at nearly 1 million cubic meters. To give you an idea, that much rock would fill 400 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And the million-dollar question is, who built them? Where was the stone taken? The answer is, no one knows. This is the part I truly enjoy, an exquisite sarcasm of history. You know China, right? The place with the most meticulous, insane, and extensive tradition of historical record-keeping on the planet. During the Han Dynasty 2,000 years ago, the time scientists guess is the age of Longu, the Chinese recorded everything, from taxes, weather, and rebellions, to how many times the emperor sneezed a day. Yet, there isn't a single line, not a single word in any historical text mentioning Longu. No tools left behind, no bones, no broken pottery shards, no stele proudly stating, "Great Emperor X ordered the construction of this wonder." 400 pools worth of stone evaporated from the earth, and the ghosts who dug them out left not even a fingerprint to confirm they ever existed. Step back and look at the big picture I'm painting for you. Look at the pattern that is coldly emerging. Over 200 tangled underground cities in Turkey, a massive underground megacity in Nevşehir still sinking in darkness, and now 24 colossal Longu caves erased from human historical memory. This is not a coincidence. This is evidence of a repeating human response, a primal instinct triggered by a repeating ultimate fear. When the ground you stand on is no longer safe, go down. When the sky above you rains death, seek the protection of stone. When everything you build on the surface can be crushed, burned, or swept away, build beneath it. Every black underground structure, every city swallowed by the jungle, every coastline submerged by the ocean. They are all converging on a single, haunting realization about our human race. We don't just build to inhabit. We build to survive. We build to remember. And most importantly, we build to warn. So, what are they trying to warn us about? That is where we are headed next. There is a stone pillar at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey that has robbed researchers of their sleep since the day it was unearthed from the swirling dust. They gave it a soulless name, Pillar 43. Some more romantic souls call it the Vulture Stone, but I prefer to call it what it truly is: humanity's oldest and most desperate warning. Look closely at the relief on the stone surface. It is dense, tangled, and carries a strange, haunting air. At the center is a vulture with its wings spread, holding a circular object, perhaps a sphere, or more creepily, a skull. Right beneath that scavenger bird is a scorpion. Around them is an orderly mess of other animals and abstract symbols. Believe me, you don't carve something like this into a hard stone weighing dozens of tons just for beauty. It doesn't look like a harmless decoration. It exudes intentionality. It is trying to scream something through the dust of time. In 2017, Dr. Martin Sweatman and his team from the University of Edinburgh dropped a bomb on the world of archaeology. They proposed a translation for Pillar 43. They argued that the mess of animals wasn't a prehistoric zoo. They were constellations. The vulture, that's Sagittarius. The scorpion, that is Scorpius. The sphere on the vulture's wing, that is the sun. All the tattoos on this block were pieced together to describe a specific moment, an X-ray of the night sky. Sweatman used a computer to rewind time, searching for when the sky was arranged exactly like that relief. And the machine spat out a number that made the air in the office turn thick, around 10,950 BC. Sound familiar? That is the eve of the Younger Dryas, the catastrophic mini-ice age that we shiveringly mentioned in the previous tape. The moment when a host of giant animal species on Earth was violently wiped out. The Clovis culture in North America evaporated from the map, and the sky rained fire from a cosmic impact. If Sweatman is right, and of course the academic establishment is still breaking into a cold sweat debating this, then Pillar 43 is not a work of art. It is a black box. It is a monument to the apocalypse. A civilization crawled through the ashes, looked back at the disaster that just tore their world apart, and decided to encode that moment into the only medium that could survive so-called deep time. By 2025, Sweatman even claimed Göbekli Tepe was the world's oldest observatory and calendar, an early warning radar system aimed at predicting the next catastrophic alignments from the stars. Now, I want you to stop. Think for a moment. If you, right now, wanted to send an SOS message to a civilization 10,000 years into the future, how would you do it? Write it on paper. Paper will be dust after a few centuries. Save it on a hard drive, USB, or cloud storage. Good Lord. Electronic formats become trash within a single generation. Is anyone watching this video who still has a device to read a floppy disk or 8-track tape from 50 years ago? No. How about metal? Metal will rust or be taken by some inferior civilization to be melted down into swords. The only medium that won't betray you under the pressure of geological time is stone. And you can't just pick any random stone. It must be the hardest, most stubborn kind: granite, andesite, limestone, bedrock. Do you notice a pattern? Any ancient culture that wanted to build megalithic structures chose the most stubborn material they could dig up. They cut them, moved stones weighing hundreds of tons and fitted them with absurd precision so that a razor blade couldn't slide through. Why go through such hardship? If it was just for rain shelter, a thatched hut would suffice. If it was just for worshiping gods, a crude stone circle would do. You don't need to roll an 800-ton stone just to pray. You don't need to use andesite cutters at a soaring altitude of 12,800 feet in the Andes just to bury the dead. Unless your purpose was not to build a house, but to build an immortal monument. The hypothesis is these structures were designed with the inherent purpose of existing forever. They were built to survive ice ages, great floods, earthquakes that tear the earth apart, and the slow, ruthless erosion of time. Put yourself in the shoes of apocalypse survivors. Everything you know is being erased. Your coastal cities have sunk beneath monster waves. The young are gradually forgetting the technologies you once possessed. What will you do? You will arrange stones into giant arrows pointing to the stars to preserve astronomical knowledge. You will make your structures as large, heavy, and sturdy as possible, because that message must last not for a few years, not for a few centuries, but for tens of millennia. And here, my friends, is where our story reaches the peak of irony, a perfect irony that makes one want to laugh in bitterness. Not long ago, elite American engineers at the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant in New Mexico scratched their heads over a very modern problem. Underground nuclear waste will remain deadly for 10,000 years. How do we warn humans 10,000 years from now not to dig here? Language by then will surely have vanished. The skull and crossbone symbol by then might be misunderstood as the sign of a treasure. The U.S. Department of Energy burned millions of dollars to find the answer. And do you know what they concluded? They proposed building massive, monolithic, sharp, and threatening man-made structures. Colossal architectural blocks relying on scale and anomaly to communicate fear without using a single letter. Essentially, the 21st century brain concluded that the best way to warn the future is to build a modern Göbekli Tepe, a structure that screams at the viewer, "Don't touch this. There is something terrible sleeping beneath." We are spending millions of dollars to figure out how to warn the future using the exact same method that someone 12,000 years ago used to try and warn us. The stones are still standing there. The suicide note from the past is still sitting right there on the ground. But unfortunately, for thousands of years, we have been too busy with our own arrogance. We stroke our egos with the thought that ancestors were just cavemen. We look at stone and say it's just stone. We look at myth and smirk, saying it's just a fairy tale. But what would happen if the past wasn't primitive at all? If our confidence in modern civilization was just an illusion gradually collapsing under the light of new evidence? So, here we are, my friends, at the final breaking point of this journey. Or perhaps we are just digging deeper into the hole we jumped into from the first episode. Look back at what we just pulled out of the darkness. We stood in the shadow of the ruins at Baalbek, staring at stone blocks weighing as much as an entire fleet of modern excavators. Machines that we would struggle to build today to lift them. We climbed to 12,800 feet in the air-thin Altiplano, stroking the perfect cuts on volcanic rock that no cheap bronze tool of the Bronze Age could ever scratch. We held our breath and dove into the freezing waters of the Baltic Sea, where a massive 10,000-year-old wall sits silently waiting for a geology professor to accidentally trip over it. We scouted off the coast of Brittany, where a 7,000-year-old granite superwall rests under 9 meters of Atlantic water, completely invisible until someone thought of throwing a laser at the seabed. We redrew the map of a grand continent swallowed beneath the North Sea, and realized with awe through ancient DNA that it was once a lush paradise before being coldly crushed and devoured by massive tsunamis. We witnessed LiDAR technology strip away the vegetation of the Amazon and the Maya lands, exposing colossal megacities that satellites couldn't see and ground explorers would miss even if they walked right through them. Damn, that technology has only existed for less than a decade. Imagine what else it will unmask 10 years from now. And don't forget the Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old lump of rusted bronze picked up by divers from a random shipwreck. At first, people thought it was trash. It turns out it is a mechanical computer, a devilish device that could predict eclipses and track the moon's orbit with absurd precision, so much so that it took 21st century physics just to understand what the hell it was doing. Now face the question that I've left hanging over your heads all night. What does this entire beautiful mess mean? Let's start with what we know for sure. The historical timeline you were forced to memorize in school is being slapped in the face repeatedly by archaeological discoveries themselves. And hey, not by some guys in tinfoil hats believing in internet conspiracies, but by rigorous peer-reviewed scientific research sitting proudly in the journals Science, Antiquity, or the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. With each passing year, the timeline is stretched further into the past. Each year, ancient people are proven to be smarter than we thought. Each year, something irrational rises from the ground, in a place where textbooks said, impossible. We know that the submerged continental shelves of the Ice Age, where the most elite civilizations were likely to settle, are still sinking in darkness. We look for too little and ignore too much. The Blinker Wall, Thonis Heracleon, Yonaguni, all were found thanks to something called luck. That isn't scientific exploration. That is gambling. If we picked up an Antikythera mechanism from a random sunken boat, the question is, how many other ancient supercomputers were melted down to cast rusty bronze pots? Yes, I know the traditional explanations. Academic scholars always have a sedative ready for every anomaly. The Baalbek stones could have been dragged by a massive army of slaves using ropes and muscle. The precision cuts at Puma Punku could be the result of decades sitting and grinding stone with sand. The underwater cities are just tiny, unlucky fishing villages. But when you piece them all together, this damn pattern is what demands attention. The relentless accumulation of things slightly too old, slightly too big, slightly too sophisticated compared to standard norms. The Quran hypothesis I mentioned is always right. Earth is a perfect evidence destruction machine. For the past 4.5 billion years, it has continuously crushed, melted, torn apart, and submerged everything on its surface. The geological record is always a book with 99% of its pages torn out. You must always remember this mantra. The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Regardless of who built Baalbek, Puma Punku, or Göbekli Tepe, the truth is they manipulated the physical world with a sophistication that our textbooks are still breathless trying to catch up with. The only conclusion you and I can draw tonight is we have misunderstood the past completely. Not just wrong about the dates, we are wrong about the scale, wrong about the ambition, and wrong about the intellectual capacity of our ancestors. And here is the final slap of irony for you and me. We, the humans who claim to be the pinnacle of evolution, are creating our own strata. Scientists call it the Anthropocene. Do you know what eternal mark we will leave on this planet? Microplastics in the Mariana Trench, artificial radioactive isotopes frozen in the Antarctic ice core, and a ridiculous increase in carbon concentration in the atmosphere. That is our monument. Millions of years from now, whatever civilization digs through this rock layer will see just how much our signature stinks. The question, were we the first, has now given way to a colder question. What were they trying to leave behind, and what kind of trash are we leaving? The stones at Göbekli Tepe still stand firm because those minds wanted the future to know they once lived, once erred, and once crumbled. The pharaohs carved their names into granite to refuse death. Someone in the shadows of prehistory chose the only medium that could defeat deep time: stone. Next time you stand on a beach watching the mindless waves lick away your footprints, or when you look up into the infinite void of the stars and wonder who once stood at these exact coordinates, looking up at that same sky, ask yourself two things. If someone was here before us, what are they screaming through the silence of the stones? And if we are truly alone, what message do we want to leave for the unfortunate ones who will inherit this planet? If you like the feeling of reality being unmasked, hit like on this video and subscribe to the Dark History channel. Your support is the only thing keeping these excavations of the mind going. And don't forget to leave me a comment. If you could step through the screen and explore one site from tonight's video, which would you choose? And if I gave you a hammer, a chisel, and asked you to leave a message carved in stone for 12,000 years from now, what words would you carve? This isn't a riddle for bearded professors. It's a question for you. Because history is never a closed book. It is a crime scene, still bleeding. And every next stroke of the pickaxe could rewrite the entire story. I am Zorro. Thank you for being brave enough to listen. See you beneath the rock layers in the next investigation.